President Trump's former defense lawyer, Todd Blanche, sworn in today, a normally celebratory step that was actually closed to the press, which is one of a few signs that the DOJ clash here didn't go well for Blanche and Trump. Another unusual, albeit minor clue, was that there's reporting the DOJ team asked people to clap Blanche in when he arrived this morning. You see him there. MS Now reporting. We don't know why that special request was made, but we do know that there's many indications that Blanche's credibility has been low in the department, even if they got some people to come out to the hallway for this spectacle. Indeed, unlike most of Trump's cabinet nominees, Blanche barely got confirmed at all. He struggled to get that original nomination out of committee. You may remember there was a lot of reporting on that. That first vote canceled because he was going to lose it had it been held then. He also ultimately lost the votes of some Republican senators, leading to last week's nail biter, where he got through by a single vote because he lost some Republicans. And he wouldn't even have gotten through by that vote had he not had to compromise under pressure, ruling out that already frozen MAGA crime fund. That's what it took to win back two of what turned out to be needed Republican votes. So that is actually, I think, the most important development here legally, and it underscores 2 points. The first, pressure works. Donald Trump made a lot of noise about a lot of things that he could have done. Maybe he would skip the whole vote and just keep Blanche in there on an acting basis, try again next year if maybe they still held the Senate. It was bluster, as usual. It was a bluff. Because the Republican senators did get Blanche to formally end that fund after Trump made all those big, cocky-sounding threats. That's one. Pressure works. Two, Donald Trump still wants to fund and reward MAGA convicts. He wanted to do that up to the end, meaning he still wants to do it right now, even if his hands are more tied legally. He was at one point musing about risking the whole nomination for that goal. He was undercutting Blanche and the others who had publicly claimed the fund was already over, because it wasn't over, because he wants it. It's Trump's priority, even, depending on how you look at it, his possible obsession. As president, Donald Trump already infamously used more of his authority to act against police, against their well-being, against their safety, against punishing those who attack police, be they federal or other types of police. He did that on the side of convicts more than any other president. He might like you to forget that. He has a lot of aides who do a lot of rhetorical backflips trying to disappear that, and then he has a propaganda machine that lies about that. But on this network and on this program, we will always remind you of that very recent history that they are trying to memory hold because we don't want to relive it. This new clash, of course, was about seizing your tax dollars to pay MAGA convicts, including possibly those from January 6th. And that's where those key Republican senators drew their line. And when Blanche's confirmation looked doomed, he then relented and compromised and submitted this written and signed memo stating that that MAGA fund is dead, that those funds will not be used, I should say abused if it was actually tried, to fund convicts and other violent people just because they're aligned with the president. The fund, which I will not call by its propaganda name, although you can read it off the screen if you choose, the MAGA crime fund was rescinded, signed by Mr. Blanche. The Times reports that there could be loopholes there, and that could be by design, because that's the whole reveal here. Blanche may have been willing to write that up under the pressure, and others in the DOJ have tried to walk away from that because, by the way, it was already frozen in court, probably illegal, a lot of things, but Donald Trump wants to take your money and use it that way.
This would be a reimbursement for the pain that they suffer. A lot of people like it. If they don't approve Todd, I put it back on the table. A lot of people like it. A lot of big supporters of Trump like it.
Kind of a nonsensical, corrupt statement there. He wants to take your money without any act of Congress or under any legal authority and give it out to convicts. And then when he tries to defend it, this is why a lot of people say Trump is not the communicator he might have once been, he says the convicts getting the money like it. Yeah, most people like free money. Convicts might like it extra in the case of these folks who in any other normal time would still be incarcerated, but that's hardly a defense. Trump prioritized this on his first full day in office, pardoning over 1,000 of those convicts. The Trump DOJ also abandoned the seditious conspiracy case against the very militias who were part of that effort to overthrow democracy. Trump signaled it's okay to do this as long as it's on his behalf. And so this is the whole story. On the one hand, they were stopped, and it took leverage and pressure. That's why I told you step one, pressure works. On the other hand, not only Donald Trump and Blanche and those enablers, but a heck of a lot of other people in our country who would rather just look the other way or not deal with this or try to give Trump the benefit of the doubt or just hope they don't have to deal with this the next time there's a coup attempt in our capital, are looking away from the fact that Trump does want this kind of paid militia. He has not changed. He has actually only gotten more anti-police and more direct in this. It's the warning we heard from Congressman Raskin.
It's all about weaponizing the tax dollars of the American people to support Donald Trump's private militia. If these people had real viable causes of action against anybody, they would go to federal court. And the ones who have gone to federal court have lost their cases overwhelmingly.
Fact check, true. That was kind of going into the beginning of the summer. Here we are in the heart of the summer, nearing the end, if you look at it that way, in August. And we've gone from that idea of floating to being blocked in court to being fought back in Congress to, with the leverage of this confirmation fight, perhaps the one thing about it that upholds the rule of law, to the thing being signed and sealed as dead under the law of the new Attorney General, under his hand. Now, if Trump does still get Blanche to try to reverse that, you can try to rescind a memo, just as you rescinded the fund, right? They will end up back in court. And they will have a problem, which is everything I've just told you that's happened up to now. This thing was already paused by a judge, but it's now rescinded, signed by Blanche, and so trying to revive that would be very hard. And this isn't something that the president can just do alone. That's why he's run into so much trouble. When you actually need to move money out of the Treasury and you need to make bank transfers and you need all these different government officials involved, a judicial order blocking it blocks it. Now, when you look at this and you say, okay, I guess it's kind of over, but we should be vigilant, what is the final takeaway? I will tell you in plain English. He wanted a coup. He supported a violent sedition, as adjudicated in our courts of law. He got back into power and he released every last one of those violent thugs. And as if that weren't enough, he wanted to take your money to fund them. Why? Donald Trump doesn't pay back his own contractors and lawyers and other staff. We've heard that for decades. Why is he suddenly so interested in getting money to these people, even though now it's been stopped? Apparently, he wants them on call and ready to act again in the next election or two.